HOA messed up big time, violating my disability laws, saying I'm lying about it, and then committing fraud. Check out this video in podcast form by searching Austin Stories wherever you listen, or check the video description for a link. Okay, so where to begin? I've been in a battle with my HOA for months. This whole mess started when I was suspected a board member of receiving kickbacks on jobs. I and a few other homeowners had set up a sting operation. A family friend is a licensed contractor, and he put in a bid for work. The president invited him over, and during the conversation, the president bluntly said, any job approval requires a 10% overbid deposit if you want the work. He did record this on his phone, but because we're in a two-party consent state, it couldn't be used. We have sent numerous requests for financial records and have been stonewalled for months. The owner of the property management company is in on the scam as well. I and 5 other concerned homeowners have been stonewalled time and time again. We finally banded together, got a lawyer, and of course COVID hits and the courts are closed. So 3 weeks ago, I had a major operation affecting my ability to walk. I am wheelchair bound temporarily. I submitted a request for an accommodation of a ramp that I would pay for. These are individual houses and would have zero encumbered on any other homeowner in the community. HOA, of course, denies the request. The reason? Well, homeowner has not proven that they are disabled. A note from the surgeon was sent over. Denied reason? HOA called the doctor's office. Doctor does not exist. Homeowner is making up false claims. You can't make this crap up, right? So I say screw it, and I put the ramp up. Board member decides to put up brick pavers in front of the ramp with caution tape on it and a note saying unapproved. Lawyer reached out to the board one last time before filing and accidentally got a reply meant for the other board members. I'm gonna freaking get him. He's lying and just trying to be a pain in our butt. Let's just keep denying the request. We're the motherfreaking board and we set the rules and what we say goes. The judge grants injunction and is trespassed from my property. I sort of forgot about the whole thing. The board's been leaving me alone. Until today, when 2 board members came banging on my door, telling me that they're going to off me. Thanks, Ring, for recording it all. Yelling how they will make me permanently crippled. So, turns out the community's insurance company refused to pay the legal bills. They were also not indemnified because it was done with malice. The 2 board members are on the hooks for almost $9,000 in legal fees plus $35,000 in punitive damages. The icing on the cake here is that message was not originally meant to go to OP, but does and just completely destroys the board. I love it. What would have you done? Contractor won't admit he was wrong about a costly mistake. I recently did a remodel and we put in electric radiant floor heating. I've installed these systems before and I've read the manual cover to cover because, yeah, I'm that over-research guy who likes to understand it before I use it. Anyhow, we hired a contractor and his main subcontractor installed the wire and set it with thinset. The problem is, I didn't see how they placed it. I didn't know they were at the stage where they were installing it and only found out when they told me as they were leaving for the day. Well, I raised that as an issue to say that I didn't make sure before you permanently bonded it to the floor that it was in a layout that I wanted. Not only that, they shared photos with me of the before we covered it, and I identified a clear issue. In one area, the cable run far exceeds the distance recommended by the manufacturer. It will lead to inconsistent and uneven floor heating. I pointed this out as a concern, and I was repeatedly told, well, I've installed these systems hundreds of times, it's perfectly fine. So the tile went down, and finally we can test the system. Shocker alert, it is noticeably colder to the touch in the spot that I identified, directly in front of the vanity and middle path, which is the most trafficked area in the room. When I brought this up, I was told, hey, it's normal and it's fine. And I disagreed, and they basically tried to gaslight me and say that it's not a big issue at all, it's fine, there's nothing we can do about it, and that to rip the floors up and replace it all would be expensive for me, the homeowner, to buy all the new materials and pay for labor, which I'm not sure he understands how the contract works. I'd be less irritated if I didn't identify the issue before it got to this stage and they had time to address it before it became too expensive. Now there's tile down, and the only option is to strip all the floors down to the subfloor again and redo it. I'm not trying to start a battle with the contractor, but when I spend a lot of money for a professional install, I expect a professional result that meets the standards and follows the installation instructions outlined by the manufacturer. Sounds like to me these guys just wanted a quick buck and they were going to try to screw over OP, thinking that he wouldn't know. But I mean, hey, you point out the issue early on, still doesn't get fixed, something's wrong here. What would have you done? HOA and bamboo. I hate my HOA. I hate them so much. I lease a condo in a building in Florida and have lived in the same unit since September of 2018. I've had a number of significant issues with the building during this time. My current dispute. So I have bamboo on my balcony and I've had it since the fall of 2020. I use them because I live in an inside corner unit and pretty much anyone can look directly into my bedroom window if I have the curtains open for light. The bamboo acts as a privacy screen. Yesterday, I get a call from my landlord that they've received notice that I'm in violation. She sends me a copy and it says, "Big Tree" as my violation. I never received notice of my violation. My landlord says the HOA has stopped sending notifications to renters. First off, I believe this is a violation of state law. A fine or suspension levied by the Board of Administration may not be imposed unless the board first provides at least 14 days notice to the parcel owner, and if applicable, any occupant, licensee, or invitee of the parcel owner. Furthermore, the rules and regulations for the HOA say that there may be potted plants on the balcony. No articles other than patio-type furniture and potted plants and white light floor lamps shall be placed on the balconies, patios, terraces, and other common elements or limited common elements. Now, the only part of the R&R that mentions plants at all is just that potted plants are permitted. It doesn't give any limitations in size or type of plants permitted. I'm planning on emailing them with two things: a reminder that they're required to send me a copy of the violation notice, and a request for what remedy they would find acceptable since plants are allowed. I don't want to get rid of the bamboo. I like it, and at this point, each plant is worth around $1,200. From my understanding, the fact that the R&R just says potted plants are acceptable means that they can't currently enforce anything against me, but I could be wrong. I've read that the court precedent supports the fact that boards can only enforce what's written in their rules. Can anyone provide insight into this? This says to include the definition of tree, since they know that bamboo shoots aren't trees, but then it could really just depend. How would you handle this one? Neighbor is trying to use the county and police to enforce their HOA. I recently purchased a vacant piece of 20 acres in a rural county. A 5-acre subdivision with HOA restrictive covenants borders my property. I am not in the HOA. The access for my property is through a deeded public county road that goes through the HOA neighborhood. As soon as I bought my property, I went out to take the sign down. The president of the HOA came down to ask me what I was doing there, and what my plans are for the property. I was polite and friendly. He told me about their HOA and told me that I was required to submit any plans I had for the property to him before I could build or do anything. I politely let him know that I was not in the HOA but had intentions of being neighborly. Over the course of 6 months, he would call me any time we visited the property, and 2 days later, we would get a letter from the county about a nuisance complaint. I eventually asked him to stop calling me and let him know my private property was my private business and that I would not be calling him every time I visited or used my land. The complaints to the county escalated. Every time I went to my property, I could be sure there would be a complaint that I was committing some infraction that I was not. I met with the county zoning and building enforcement officers. I explained to them what was happening. I showed them that I was not committing the violations I was being accused of, and I expressed my frustration with having to explain myself and deal with these complaints every time I used my property. They agreed and assured me that I was within compliance and not to worry. The HOA has escalated again. First off, calling and emailing every person with a county email address to deliver false complaints. Contacting every state and county organization from air quality control to Division of Wildlife to the tax assessor, trying to find any and all regulations that I may or may not be in violation of. And then they were blocking the road and my access to my property, physically with their vehicles and firearms. I had to wait on my property until the police arrived to remove them before I could leave. They were video surveilling me, my property, and my visitors any time that we visited the property, and they've gone to 2 county commission meetings now and blatantly lied and slandered me to the county commission during public comment. They've tried to start the process to vacate the road to my property. Throughout the process, I have communicated with the county and maintained a good relationship and ensured that I was in compliance. One of the county commissioners told me, "This is not about a specific violation, this is about the HOA attempting to exercise control over your property that they do not have and reaching for any straw that they can find when one attempt is unfruitful." I'm not sure what to do or how to make it stop. I generally just ignore them, but on the advice of police, I serve the neighbors with notice of trespass and a letter to cease and desist the ongoing stalking and harassment. This was to no avail. At this point, I feel like there has been blatant defamation, false light, and intentional affliction of emotional distress, but I don't know that I've been damaged other than my time and effort to deal with their frivolous complaints. What options do I have to make it stop? Do you agree? Good Lord, this definitely needs to be handled by a competent attorney or attorneys in your jurisdiction, like 2 months ago. There's so much to untangle here, and there are likely complaints to bodies that you're unaware of. At the very least, keep a detailed record of every interaction that you've had with them in some kind of journal and logbook that details the police being called out. Certainly get a report or case number from the officers, any text messages, voicemails, or emails, and so on before calling attorneys in your area. If you're concerned about the HOA having influence over your local law offices, if you live in a small town, then look up one in your state's capital. I mean, if they're blocking you from the property with the guns and the firearms and vehicles, and it's all done illegally and they're using cops against you, you gotta lawyer up. What would you do? It's the Great Pumpkin Vindictive HOA President, posted by Deleted. I babysat and elder sat for the neighbors down the street who committed this malicious compliance, so I was there to hear the ranting as this whole mess went down. We'll call my neighbors Liz and Dave. They were nice folks who ran afoul of the Homeowners Association when the busybody president, who lived next door to them, we'll call her Joan, got it in her rotted turnip for a brain that Liz and Dave had taken in an illegal renter. Renting out rooms was strictly against HOA policy. They had not rented out a room. Liz's elderly mother had moved in with them after breaking her hip and being unable to live alone anymore. Joan sent them a very threatening letter about their unlawful renter and how fines would accrue if the unlawful renter didn't vacate immediately. It was accompanied with a copy of that part of the bylaws and pictures of Liz's elderly mother taken through windows of their house. Creep alert! They wrote back that there was no renter and they explained the situation. Joan did not believe that story and had the HOA lawyers start sending them certified letters about their continued violations with ever-increasing insane fines. This went over poorly. Liz and Dave got their own lawyer to fire back a cease and desist letter. After many increasingly aggressive back and forth, it all culminated in an association meeting where Liz, Dave, and Liz's mother came in with ID and birth certificates and basically made Joan look like the pimple on the backside of humanity that she was. They won, but Joan was furious and swore that she'd get them for something. Joan maintained until the day I left for college, last I knew of her, that Liz and Dave had forged those driver's license and birth certificates to keep their unlawful renter. Cut to the following fall. Liz and Dave needed to repaint the house after making some siding repairs post-hurricane. They carefully checked the bylaws for approved paint colors and picked out a fairly bland shade of something between brown and tan. They gave the painters the color info listed in the bylaws to the painters, and then the painting happened. Less than a week after their house was painted, they got another certified letter from the HOA lawyer stating that their house was in the wrong color. They fired back evidence that they ordered exactly what was in the bylaws. Well, after many back and forths, it turned out that the approved color and the swatches on file with the board no longer matched because the manufacturer had changed the colors in their line slightly due to some kind of formula change. Their house was a few shades darker than it should have been. See, the bylaws listed the manufacturer color info for convenience, but the shades actually had to match the official swatches that you could have theoretically borrowed from the board and gotten color matched. Nobody ever did that, but Joan was out for blood after the unlawful renter and forced them to have to repaint. Liz and Dave were taking no chances on the second try. They got the swatch set from the HOA, and for some reason, it made no distinction between approved accent colors — most houses in the neighborhood had brightly colored doors — or house colors. They decided that if they had to paint the house a second time, Joan, the dog that caught the car, could live next to the most garish option they had. It was pumpkin orange. The painters asked multiple times if they were sure. Yeah, they were very sure. You couldn't see the orange from inside, but you sure could from next door. Joan made many attempts to object to this, but it was within the letter of the HOA rules, and the house stayed orange until long after I moved away. This commenter sums up the HOA president by saying, "True story. One time we, my college buddies who were living with me, and some fellow young folks, obviously renters as well, were in the hot tub, and the Queen HOA demon came and sat down in there with us. They were very polite and introduced themselves to her, and then said, 'What's your name?' She responded with one word: owner." In 2019, I bought a condo. I had not been moved in more than 10 days when I got a knock on the door. I live in a building that only has apartments on the second floor — there's 4 floors — and a communal area below us. I like the location because I don't have to worry about being loud to people beneath me. Well, this Karen knocks on the door and I open it. "Hi, I'm Karen and we share a wall." "I'm Austin." "Okay, can I help you?" "I have done the pricing on having my outlets sealed. You need to pay half because I can smell the food that you are cooking since you moved in, and I do not like it." "Excuse me, what?" "I do not like the smells coming from your house. It makes me nauseous." "What smells are causing you to feel sick?" "The cabbage and onion smells, and you cooked fish. It is unbearable." "Maybe you should hustle down to Bed Bath & Beyond and buy one of those fancy expensive scented candles." "No. I need you to pay me half for having my outlets sealed." "No, I will cook what I want to cook in my apartment that I bought. There's nothing in the CC&Rs that says I need to avoid cooking fish or cabbage. Also, onions are a primary ingredient in a lot of world cuisine. I will continue to use all of these ingredients." "Well, I paid for my apartment as well, so I do not want to be subject to your nasty smells." "Okay, look, here is the deal. I'm going to close the door. If you want to improve your home by sealing outlets that will not stop the smell, you're entirely within your right as a homeowner to do that. However, you will do it at your own expense. Moving forward, there is no reason for you to interact with me unless there's a legitimate issue with the wall or the pipes that we share." "Well, that is just rude." "I am unconcerned with how you feel about me or the food that I cook. There is no reason for you to ever talk to me again unless it has to do with our shared wall and our pipes. Goodbye." I shut the door and went back to my business. A couple of days later, the HOA leader knocked on my door and asked me about the issue. I told her that I was not entertaining any of this bullcrap, that the two could call the police and send them out to arrest me over the cabbage, onions, and fish. The HOA leader laughed out loud and told me that she just wanted to be sure that things were calm and that there were no issues moving forward. I told her that we'd be cool if Karen minded her own dang business and didn't concern herself with my dietary decisions. I've been here 3 years now and I see Karen regularly. We do not interact unless necessary. We had a pipe burst during our 2021 winter storm and we had to get together and threaten to sue the HOA when they said they would not fix the pipes. They own them and they're responsible for them. There was no problem. Afterward, we went back to peacefully coexisting without having to be friends or interact with each other. I still cook cabbage, fish, and onions. What have you done? You literally can cook what you want in your own dang house, okay? I'm going to make what I want and grill my steak medium. That's right. I've said medium in a previous video. Got some comments. How do you cook your steak? I screwed up by not paying my HOA dues. Very recently started working again. We owed about $2,000 in condo fees and HOA dues. The HOA had served us for court. The court date was last month, and I started working a new job the week before, so I didn't go to court, figuring the judge would default judge for the plaintiff, HOA, and my new wages would get garnished, as has happened to me with creditors in the past. Instead, the HOA lawyer requested a continuance and that the judge issue capias warrant. I didn't know any of this. Worked all day yesterday, and I was exhausted when I got home. I went to bed at 9:30 p.m., but 10 minutes later, someone was pounding on the door like they were the cops or something. They were the cops. They scared my wife and kids and my dogs pretty bad. They wouldn't and couldn't tell me why they were arresting me, but took me out of my house in handcuffs and to jail. When I got to jail, after a bit in the holding cell, one of the arresting officers, and a 55-year-oldish officer, took me to a little room. I asked why I was there, and they couldn't believe that I would have no idea. I said that the only legal trouble, besides a paid-for speeding ticket last year, was my HOA was trying to get a judgment on me for unpaid HOA dues. They said that that couldn't be it. A few minutes later, the magistrate's office sends over a fax saying that the warrant was issued on behalf of my HOA lawyer's request. The cops were surprised, as they had never arrested anyone for civil cases involving overdue bills. I talked to the magistrate over a Skype type of interface and was given a court date for the charge of failure to appear and another court date for the unpaid HOA dues. I was then released 25 miles from home. Bad night. An update. So I may have been wrong, but the cops came again to arrest me again about 20 minutes ago. I was able to convince them that they had already arrested me last week. Thank God the paperwork was at arm's length. What do you think about this story? Should OP be in trouble or is the HOA being dirty? Let me know what you think. This one's an interesting one. Karen wants my tires. It's almost snow season here, and I booked an appointment to have my tires swapped today a month ago. First snow is forecast Wednesday morning, so I knew it would be busy when I got there. It was actually chaos. I checked my vehicle in after about 15 minutes in line, and I was thinking that they were moving pretty quickly for it to be that short, given that they had so many vehicles. There were even some parked on the grass. I had to park a quarter mile down and walk up. And for the next hour, I waited and got to hear the poor employees get screamed at over and over by walk-in customers with no appointments who thought that they should get their tires immediately. But the last one really takes the cake. She'd been staring through the big windows at the shop the whole time she was in line. She was told she had two choices: make an appointment for next Monday and come back, or leave her vehicle and they'd get it done in the order that it came in after those with appointments, so she'd probably need to come back in 8 hours. She started freaking out, screaming and cussing that she needed her tires now and didn't care who was in front of her because she was the first one in line right now. The employee patiently and kindly explained her options again and that they were booked solid for a week. She never even looked at him. She cut him off, yelling at him to give her the tires in the back of that black little SUV that just rolled out. I checked over my shoulder, and sure enough, they just finished up my Land Rover. The employee kept trying to tell her that my tires are mine and that they have plenty of tires. They only have 4 work bays. Well, that SUV is off the lift, so just put mine on it and give me the tires that you put in the back of it. It's really simple. Are you an idiot? He blinked, started to say something, and I cut in. Hey, that's my vehicle. Those are my tires. I own them. Are you suggesting that he steal my all-terrain tires that suck in snow and have them put on your car that they won't even fit? She said, tires are tires. Well then drive off with the ones you have on and leave everyone here the heck alone. Her now whining like a toddler, but they're not snow tires. I need snow tires. I just lost it laughing. Neither are my off-road tires that they'd taken off my rims to put my snow tires on. So I say, seriously, just make an appointment like the rest of us did, and you'll have tires that fit. No, stop yelling at people and go book it online. So I stood up. I don't think I'm exactly intimidating as a 5'6", 49-year-old woman, but it worked. She left and several others in line followed her out. I felt bad about that, honestly. So I say to the employee, sorry you lost business there, but my vehicle is done? He was laughing but trying to hide it. Apparently, everyone that left had been in earlier yelling at them too, so he didn't mind. I still don't understand what her thought process was in the whole thing. Someone said, as I was leaving, that she'd also left her car parked in the middle of the right-hand traffic lane on the busy highway in front of the place. But a shout out to that employee for never losing his cool at all. I can only imagine what his day was like already by the time that she started in, based on just the time I was there. Friendly reminder, if you live somewhere it snows, book your tire appointment in advance. I would like them to try to put those tires on Karen's car. It's not going to work. That is basic knowledge, is it not? And I'm not even a mechanic. I'm not moving until the police get here. So I'm a shift supervisor for a retail drugstore chain. This happened yesterday in my parking lot. I don't know what this is called, so I'm just going to call it the drive path. In an enclosed parking lot, you have parking spots on both sides. In the middle, there are 2 unmarked lanes where cars drive to get in and get out. Those lanes are what I'm calling the drive path. So I'm doing my usual task in the store when a customer asks me to call the cops. Apparently, there's a verbal fight going on in the parking lot. Just as I'm making my way out, the phone rings asking for a manager. An employee tells me that there was a minor fender bender in the parking lot involving a white and orange car. One of the cars is blocking the drive path, orange. Orange is blocking her and she can't get out. She just wants to go home and to please call the cops. I step outside and all I hear is yelling, so I call the police. The police dispatcher tells me that she just spoke to one of the parties involved in the accident and told them to just trade information. Apparently, the situation has escalated, so she'll send a patrol car out. I then remember there are cameras in the parking lot. Orange is still blocking the drive path and refusing to move. Unfortunately, it took the police an hour to come. During that hour, we get numerous customer complaints. Due to the volatile situation, we decide not to intervene for our safety. During that hour, quite a few near accidents happen due to the cars having to drive around orange. During that hour, we call the police again. Unfortunately, there are more pressing needs. White calls us asking if we have video footage of the accident, and we say that we do. However, we can only give it to the police or her insurance. White is satisfied and thanks us. This is just what the other employees and customers told me when outside. White is constantly telling Orange to please park her car in a parking spot. Orange keeps yelling swear words and calling White racist. After a while, White starts yelling swear words as well. Orange says something about not having insurance and recently losing her husband, and Orange keeps refusing to move until the cops get there so the cops can determine who is at fault. From what we saw on video, the accident was a minor tap from both cars backing out. No serious damage, just a few scratches and a dent. On camera, we finally see a police car pull in and immediately tells Orange to move her car. Orange complies. The video does not have audio, so we don't know exactly what was said. We then see the cop talking with both White and Orange for 10 minutes. White leaves first, and the cop has a talk with Orange. Cop waits for Orange to leave before leaving himself, and at no point did the cop come into the store or ask to see the video. I mean, wouldn't things be a lot easier if Karen's would just comply? Instead of making a whole drama scene about it, making a mountain out of a molehill, she just makes things worse for everybody and wastes all of her time. You ever run into a Karen like that? You're not a veteran, you're a woman. Due to popular demand, I've asked my friend Belle, a retired Army officer, for more Dependopotamus stories, and she delivered this lovely gem. This took place several months after she retired, but was still living in the town where she was last posted. She went to a local store to get some last-minute things for a party that she and her husband, Adam, were hosting. Belle has veteran plates on her car, and at this particular store, there's a parking space designated for veterans. So, Belle parks in the spot, when here comes our Dependopotamus, aka Karen. The exchange went roughly as follows. "What are you doing here, wearing your husband's rank?" Excuse me?" Belle replied. "You're not a veteran, you're a woman. Move or I will have you towed." "No." "Get back here." Karen reached out to grab her, but Belle moved out of the way and went inside, thinking that that would be the end of it and pitying the poor person that this woman was married to. Alas, it was only just the beginning. When Belle got home, Adam asked her if she'd seen Facebook. Belle said, "Nope, why?" And Adam then showed her. Our Dependopotamus Karen had stalked Belle throughout the store, took several pictures of her, and posted a nasty post in the military spouse support group for this particular area about how Belle wore her husband's rank and took the place away from a deserving veteran, and "my husband and I have to put up with this crap," among other colorful things. Belle just shook her head, rolled her eyes, and went on preparing for the party. That night, people started arriving. One of the people invited was a major that Belle had mentored during her last posting and had a good relationship with. He arrived, exchanged the usual pleasantries, and then said, "Let me introduce you to my wife, Karen. Karen, this is Belle Smith, my former general." According to Belle, the look on Karen's face when she saw Belle's face was priceless. Oh, wow. I didn't expect that twist, and I loved it. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall there to really see Karen's reaction and how you come back from that. How do you recover? You can't recover. What have you done? I love this one. HOA Karen said that we couldn't walk our dogs through the neighborhood with 2 updates. Check out this video in podcast form by searching Austin Stories wherever you listen, or check the video description for a link. This took place in the eastern suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio today. My wife, 24, and I, 25, were walking our dogs, both 20 pounds or less, through the suburb beside our house. We've taken our dogs this way multiple times in our 2 years of living here. We prefer this area, as the street is usually dead due to it being a dead end, and we live on a busy 4-lane street. We didn't know it was an HOA. I guess the subdivision sign could have been a hint. And today we noticed an Audi lingering behind us, slowly just creeping up on us. We both stared at it from time to time to let the driver know that we saw them. As we got past the last house to exit the suburb and head back to our house, the car finally approached us. The driver, probably early 40s female, said, "Hi ladies, do you live around here?" We weren't sure what she was wanting or needing, so we said no. Well, we live 3 doors down from this street. She said, "Okay, well, you're in an HOA and some residents have been complaining about people leaving pet waste behind." At this moment, I made dead eye contact and I lifted those waste bags that I was holding in my hand to show her that we cleaned up our pet's waste. She said, "Well, this is private property and since you don't live here, you can't walk your dogs here." She said there's a sign posted that says private property that we should have seen. We'd never heard of this before, but we made nice and said, "Okay, yeah, sure," and made sure that she didn't follow us home. We made a note to look for a sign, and all that was there was a sign that said no public parking. The driver literally reversed her way back, which I'm pretty sure was illegal. Now, our next door neighbor takes her 2 pugs down that street a few times a week too. There's no gate either. I've been looking online since I got home, and our city does not say anything about it being a private road. I'm tempted to call the city to ask about it, but I just want to make sure I'm not being a Karen. Update. Now, I called the city this morning to inquire about the road. The person that I spoke to mentioned that she lives in a development that has private streets but doesn't believe it's posted. She said that her neighbors let non-resident dog walkers know that they're trespassing. I explained why we take that street, and she said as a dog owner, she understands. She said that she believes that since it's an HOA, the road is technically private, but she was not 100% sure, so she'd inquire further and call me back with an update. I mentioned how if it's not properly posted, they should expect multiple trespassers as they have not marked the street properly. I followed up with how the woman stalked us from her car the whole time, and the city hall worker was not happy to hear that in our favor. Update 2. The amount of digging that I did to find the submitted plans for the subdivision on the county recorder's website. Whoa. In the submitted expansion from 2011, the map that the HOA submitted labels the street private. Nothing on the county and city's website labels it private. Below, a Redditor asked me the street sign color, and per Google Maps, it looks to be white with green lettering as of September 22. In researching that meaning, the state of Virginia deems that private. Now this is actually in Ohio, and I couldn't find anything for the state of Ohio listing that meaning. Per the county's HOA laws, the HOA is responsible for the sign. Again, I'm on the side of, if they don't want non-residents back there, properly post or gate the entryway. But per the county's subdivision laws, they're supposed to have a sidewalk on both sides, and they just have it on one side. Just a fun little fact while reading. Now, also where the final cul-de-sac is, there's a sidewalk that connects to the dead end of another subdivision. This does not appear to be an HOA based on how some of the houses are kept, and there's no listing online. Say it with me here in the comments. Power tripping Karen does not want to have dogs on her road, so she takes the ownership, she owns the road. Whatever, man. What would you do? This is not even right. How an HOA destroyed my parents. So this happened almost 10 plus years ago, but has cemented my hatred for HOAs. My family is from Guam, a small Pacific island in U.S. territory where there isn't much, if any, HOAs. We moved stateside around 2001 and 2002 when my dad decided that he wanted to. My parents had good jobs and made good money and had decent credit. We lived in Tennessee for a while until we drove up to Indiana to visit some family. I guess my dad liked it so much that he decided to move there. Well, after my parents got transferred to their business's Indiana branch, a few months later, we moved there. Our house was very modest, but a bit more extra than most because it was a part of an HOA. A few months living there, my dad noticed a crack in the garage. It was a poor foundation, and notified our builder. The HOA was still being built, so he was easy to find. The builder said that he'd take a look. Come to find out that not only was the foundation poorly set, but the plot of land it was on was sinking, which is a screwed up thing number one. My parents were told that, in order to fix it, it would cost more than their home loan because of the condition of the land it was on. The builder suggested that they pay him 25% cash of the home's value, and he'll build them a new house with their current mortgage, cut down 25% as a good faith gesture. Screwed up thing number two. As you're reading and listening to this, you're probably thinking, well, that can't be right. That's not legal. That's not how it works. Well, yeah, you're right, but being from a small island where you can trust someone at their word, it didn't occur to my parents to question it or get legal advice. Anyways, back to the story. So the new house is built, nicer than our previous home and not sinking. Life is good for a while until we had to go on an extended trip due to family emergency. Luckily, at this point, we'd been living there for years and my parents made some friends. We would have just left, but one of their friends let them know that they needed to inform the HOA that some lawn and garden standards wouldn't be kept due to the trip. Yes, my parents should have read the bylaws, but at first they were excited to own a home, so they never did. At the time of the emergency, they weren't thinking about anything but getting back to Guam. So my parents, still thinking that a face-to-face with the HOA board would be good enough, did just that. Told them during an HOA meeting, well, that's it. Well, our trip took a little while longer than expected. The whole summer and part of the first school year, but we finally got home. Waiting at our door were countless letters, warnings, fines, and more fines. Screwed up thing number 3. I don't exactly remember what was the total, but it really doesn't matter. My parents were broke. They spent their savings getting us to and from Guam and paying the mortgage, so yeah, no back fund. My parents went straight to the HOA for answers. Basically, it boiled down to they didn't notify the HOA of the reason for the drop in standards, so they were well within their rights to post fines. And the worst part, put a lien on our home. My parents barely covered the mortgage and the trip to Guam. They tried reasoning with them until eventually they went to court. As you're guessing from the title, it didn't go well. The HOA board hung on to the fact that my parents didn't send an email and wait for board approval. They won. My parents were forced to pay the lien while also paying the mortgage. At first, my parents were optimistic, but it got to the point where it was pay the mortgage and fines or feed my brothers and I. They fell further behind and were starting to fight about it. It became too much for them, so they had to walk away from our home. My mom was devastated, and my dad felt like a failure. I was old enough to understand what was going on, but my brothers didn't know why we had to leave our home. The whole ordeal destroyed my parents' credit, wiped out their savings, and cost my parents their good job. Mom had a job in finance requiring good credit, and my dad had to work closer to home because of the financial situation. I don't think there's any way they can recover from what they walked away from, but they're not fighting and don't have to choose between paying rent and feeding my brother. The whole experience made me really hate HOAs. While I understand why they are needed, and in some cases make complete sense, I will never move my family into one if I can help it. Do you think the HOA should have shown grace? While they were technically within the rules, they definitely took advantage of them because, well, money, right? How would have you handled it? This HOA story has an update. My condo association experience has been interesting. 239 unit high-rise in Maryland that has major capital repairs underway. The building is 40 years old, and most residents are 60 plus and have lived here under a $300 a month condo fee up until 2015, basically free, not paying for, well, anything but the basic building bills. So now the fee is $640, and on January 1st will be $840. I found out that they're dumping $500,000 on HVAC units that are in the condos. There was an amendment that allowed them to do this in 2007 because it switched all of them over to Energy Star. This was good as a whole and legal because the building supplies electric, and electric had just been deregulated, not to mention tax credits. But nothing about the amendment replaced or overrides that the HVACs, PTACs, are owner's responsibility, It's listed specifically in a list of things that the owner is responsible for. Or the fact that bylaws state any repairs done in a unit by the association using common funds will be immediately assessed to the unit. So they just started replacing them again for free because the 2007 units can no longer be fixed. Oh yeah, they have been maintaining them the whole time. There is no PTAC made since 2009 that is not energy efficient, so there is no benefit to doing this. The building saved more than it spent on them in 2007 and 8. So as there is no longer a return on it, there is no basis of doing it, as now it is just an expense. They claim they own the units, which I never read or signed an agreement at closing stating of there being 3 common elements inside the 4 walls I purchased. Meanwhile, the one repair to the building is over $2 million, and they have automatic entrance doors, a fire pump, generator, and garage doors to go, at somewhere in the park of $400,000. So instead of stopping the illegal, according to the bylaws, free living insanity and having the ability to say money is earmarked for said repairs, they're choosing to continue what got the building here. 2 members of the board are related. After I called the HVACs out at a meeting, the president and a budget committee member resigned, and the board held a closed-door temporary appointment selecting another relative. 3 kin on a 7-member board. So here's the follow-up. To address the issue of the condo association replacing the PTAC's heating and cooling units like in hotels for free when our bylaws state 3 different ways that they're not to be doing it at the cost of $70,000 a year, the board had to schedule a meeting for after the general meeting. My guess is so that we don't discuss it in front of the other members. They said they had to consult with their lawyer that they were meeting with the following day for a different issue. We got an email later that day from the president stating that our reading of the bylaws was correct, but they are going to continue to do so at their discretion. Huh? The bylaws clearly state what common funds can be used for, and if they are used for any repair inside of a private unit, that unit is to be given 10 days notice of pending repair. And once the repair is made, the condo unit is assessed and payable immediately. This led to, at the next meeting, the board crying they had to pay legal fees because they're not lawyers and they were challenged on something. Here's where it gets fun. At the same private meeting, we had to address an issue with our downstairs neighbor who aggressively, like pounding on our door like you see like when the U.S. Marshal delivers warrants, said that we were hammering on our floor at 1 a.m. over 2 nights. I work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., so yeah, that's not us. He has mental issues, a violent history, and has suffered a brain injury on top of it. What he's hearing is the elevator brakes from the elevator control room 4 floors above. The sound radiates through the concrete floors or the ceiling depending on where the lift cars are, making it sound in random places of the condo unit. Their solution was they want to inspect our unit to make sure it's 80% carpet, and we told them no. They said, well, how are we to make sure that you're in compliance? We told them in the state of Maryland you can only enter to investigate damage that threatens another unit or public safety, an emergency, or to get a limited common element to inspect, like a balcony or fire system. This is covered under Maryland 2018 Condo Act that they cite every meeting when talking about our reserve fund. Fast forward a week. We get a letter from their lawyer saying playing cat and mouse never ends well and we need to comply. So here we are with a long-sitting board that is cognitively on autopilot. Only 2 of the 7 are under 72 years old. A property manager that is to keep them away from breaking laws and civil rights, opening the COA to litigation, and an elderly real estate lawyer, 45 plus years practicing, that's never read the bylaws except for regulations for meetings and budget or the state law outside of mandatory budget requirements, a reserve study, and this is truly 3 blind mice. The pain is real. I hope they are dumb enough to file at this point. From all the communications, on paper at that, I swear they think it's 1995. The law was fast and loose back then. The lawyer may be a real estate lawyer, which is effective for foreclosing a lien, but he's not an HOA lawyer in the least. This witch of an HOA Karen is the worst I've seen. I, 34 male, and my wife, 31 female, have 2 kids, 3 and 1. We liked most of our neighbors, except Karen. She was always jealous and hateful to us, and it all came to a head with a huge surprise for us. So we live in a beautiful cul-de-sac where my family and I just moved into an amazing house with a huge backyard for the kids and to mow. We were thrilled to have such a large outdoor space, and I couldn't wait to turn it into a lush garden paradise, even though my gardening skills actually blow. The best part was that we actually got into a great neighborhood without being in their stupid HOA. Karen, however, lived right next door to us and was always keenly aware of every detail in our lives. It didn't take her long to notice that we weren't using a large part of our yard. While we did maintain it with a neatly trimmed lawn and occasional picnics, we had no immediate plans to build a garage or a shed on the unused portion. This, my friends, was the perfect storm for Karen's jealousy. You see, Karen had a small lawn of her own, barely big enough for a picnic blanket or two, and she could not stand the idea that we had this vast unutilized space. So she hatched a scheme to take matters into her own hands while we were on vacation for 2 weeks. So we locked up our house and said, "See you later," to our lovely neighborhood, and had no idea of the impending chaos that was HOA Karen greeting us upon our return. 2 weeks later, we returned home. The minute we pulled into our driveway, our jaws dropped to the ground. There stood a massive in-ground swimming pool, complete with a little diving board and slide on the side too. What in the world? I tried to control my outburst in front of my kids, but man, it's so hard to do sometimes, especially in a time like this and against a woman like her. We most certainly had not ordered a pool, nor did we have any plans to do so. As we approached, we found a letter wedged in our front door. I picked it up and my hands were shaking as I read it. It was a construction permit from the city, issued to none other than HOA Karen, allowing her to build a pool on our property. Insane. We could not believe our eyes. Karen, that dumb neighbor, had taken advantage of our vacation to construct a pool right in our own backyard. We scrambled inside with rage and began searching the house for any clues. Our first thought was that perhaps it was a well-intentioned surprise from like a close friend or a family member. But as we investigated further, we found the truth. So we were out of options, and we're just still trying to wrap our heads around this ridiculous situation, and we decided to check our home security cameras. We scrolled through the footage, and that's when we hit the jackpot, baby. There, in all of her glory, was Karen herself, supervising the construction crew as they installed the pool, all while smirking like that she thought she owned the place. We couldn't believe our luck, or should I say, her bad judgment. With evidence in hand, we took the next logical step. We contacted the HOA president and our lawyer. The conversation was nothing short of a roller coaster. The HOA president was as shocked as we were. He assured us that Karen had never received any approval for such a project, even from the HOA. I mean, we never got along with the idea of an HOA, and we weren't subjected to their regulations or fees, so where did all this crap come from? Our lawyer, on the other hand, was quite amused by the case, seeing it as an opportunity to give Karen a taste of her own medicine. With the evidence from our security cameras and construction permit, we had a strong case against her. He suggested that we gather estimates for the removal of the pool and any potential damage that it had caused on our property, and that we should also keep a record of any other related expenses. So then we submitted the evidence to the HOA president, who promptly called an emergency meeting with the association board. It didn't take long for them to come to a unanimous decision. Karen was in deep trouble, almost as deep as the pool that she thought she could get away with. HOA president paid us a visit to inform us of their decision. Karen was fined a substantial amount for her unauthorized construction project, which would help cover the cost of removing the pool. Additionally, she was ordered to compensate us for any damage that her pool had caused to our property. It was a sweet victory for us and a bitter pill for Karen to swallow. With the legal process started, we embarked on the tough task of removing the pool. The construction crew, who didn't realize they were accomplices in Karen's idiotic plan, arrived and began the process of dismantling what was now a giant eyesore in our backyard. We watched with a mixture of satisfaction and relief as the once beautiful monstrosity came crashing down piece by piece. HOA Karen's little project had cost her dearly, not just in terms of the fines and the money that she had to pay us, but also in her reputation. Her attempt to seize our property had backfired awesomely. At least she knows not to try and pull that crap again. Karen hits me with her car, covers up the crime, so I put a lien on her house. Click the video on your screen to find out why and what happened, and I'll see you there.